And welcome everybody to the April webinar, which we've done a few already. We started in January, so we've got a few done now. And this is looking, as all webinars, looking at an aspect of developing a school garden. And this month we are looking at observing and recording plant growth, why it's important to establish garden routines for pupils, and which environmental factors may have an impact on successful growing season. So we're looking at tending to the gardens. I've actually put two. We usually have one QR code, but I put two up because there's two things. One, these modules can be found both in the One Seed Forward Garden Schools website, and that top QR code will take you there. And there's also the University of Aberdeen. We've converted this into a kind of course which is modelled on the modules. So again, that one will take you to this particular thing on tending to the gardens. In the previous webinar, we examined the steps involved in planting and how to consider the space that plants need in order to grow. This session will have a look at what activities are required to tending these small seedlings on the school grounds and what learning experiences pupils can get from doing so. And I've added some quotes to the slides, which from teachers and pupils in the project that we've been involved in with One Seed Forward. I'll just get my cursor to work. So plants need adequate space both above and below the ground to grow properly. And vegetable plants expend a lot of energy to bloom and produce fruit. And it's important that the stresses this induces are managed so they keep healthy and strong until they are harvested. So pupils could be allocated sections of the garden to observe the plants that they are growing. Observation is an important skill to develop. It comes into lots of different activities, science, maths, art, and so on. So they can observe the plants that they are growing and be responsible for tending to the health of the plants they are in charge of. In journals, they can use mathematical skills to record the amount of growing on a regular basis, and we did some of that with developing graphs and charts. And this could be counting the number of leaf buds or flowers, as well as the height and width of the plants they look after. Observing is a very essential skill for art, and this can be combined with drawing the various stages of the plant as it develops, or photographs taken that can be used as a slideshow to be presented at a school assembly. And this is what one pupil at one school said. We learned, it wasn't just about sticking things in the ground. It's about, you do it nice and gentle. You have to treat the plants with respect, to the vegetables with respect. But what are key actions to tending the school garden? One of them is establishing a water routine. That's a vital part of keeping the garden healthy and the plants growing. Regular watering will ensure the proper development of the seedlings as it grows. And pupils actually love to water. I mean, one of the keenest things they did in the projects we were involved in was to do watering. So it's important that they understand the amount of water that needs to be given. We stressed last time about the sensorial activities, the various senses that are involved, and feeling and touching the soil is important here. It connects people to nature and is the best way to decide if water is needed. If it's been raining a lot, then the watering visits may be more of a checkup than a rush to the tap. So, they have to recognise that it's not always necessary to water the plants. Sometimes there's been enough natural rainfall. Investigation should also be made on how much water the plant being looked after needs. Different plants require different amounts of water. So some, like tomatoes and cucumbers, are very thirsty, and may need a daily top-up to progress their growth, whilst others will be happy to be left alone for a while. I mean, ideally, you'll have access to rainwater captured in a water butt, or you may have close access to a tap, so the watering doesn't become too messy on the school corridors. One of the schools we had, they filled up lots of containers with water so they could carry it easily in and out of the school. But it's much better if you've got close access like a water butt or a tap. And interestingly, one of the teachers we spoke to actually mentioned the watering aspect, saying it's been good, like watching them just take ownership for something as well, and they're very protective about it, and they're constantly reminding me, you know, it's Monday, we need to go out, we need to water our garden. That was after the weekend if it had been dry. Sorry, I missed that last quote. I'll just go back. I mentioned the tactile part of it. Soil becomes real to children when they start to touch it. That's important to remember about the sensory experiences. Constant reviews of the spaces for the plants are also necessary. So the removal of excess seedlings competing for space will provide healthier and bigger crops. Sorry, it's jumped on. This process is called thinning. If done carefully, can mean that the uprooted seedlings may be gently replanted further apart, because it's always a shame to have to throw out plants that you've started growing. But in effect, that's sometimes not possible. But it is a learning curve for pupils about the sacrifice in their garden for the overall benefit of all the rest of the plants there. So we may need to take some of these plants that can't be replanted elsewhere. They'll go in the compost, and they'll still be useful because they'll be used for nutrition for following years. Plants may also need to be staked if they're tall and climbing, such as peas and beans, and this should be done at an early stage so you don't cause damage to the forming roots by forcing the stake through them into the soil. We have to recognise that while it's nice to have ownership of your garden, the garden space is inhabited by many living things, and we need to recognise this in our routines. Some may be occasional visitors like cats or even foxes, like I have in my garden, which leave traces behind. Foxes are notorious for digging up things, and they often leave little holes in my garden. Some may be other pupils who accidentally disturb the plants whilst playing, and some may be pests like snails. When we remove slugs and snails, we put them into the compost heap, as they are great for breaking down organic matter and are contributing to the decomposition of our material. They're better in the compost heap than being in the vegetable space, munching on the vegetables and herbs that we are cultivating. I also heard on a radio program, this is going back a few months now, someone a specialist in slug control, a scientist, was saying that one of the best things they'd found for attracting slugs was fermenting sourdough. So it is worth exploring and trying different attractants to gather and remove the slugs and snails from your garden. A daily routine of removal should be established, which is probably best done first thing in the morning, as the slugs are most active at night when we are not in school. And of course, talking about gardening and space as well, actually there's a couple of quotes here. We recognise that the children themselves recognise, one of the schools had frogs, a little pond, and so they recognised the sharing of the garden with the frogs. And they also recognised that they could use the produce from the garden in the school. So even the school dinner ladies were involved somehow in the garden. And of course, gardening without weeding is usually impossible at some sites. And weeds compete with vegetables for water, nutrition, and space in the gardens. And they often have negative connotations. Weeds are described by the Royal Horticultural Society as wild plants in the wrong place, although they also point out that they have benefits for wildlife in the garden. A scientist, a prominent black scientist by the name of George Washington Carver of the early 20th century, is said to have described a weed as a flower growing in the wrong place. But weeds are important as they are a vital source of food for insects and pollinators, especially at times of year when these sources can be difficult to find. But if you want to get rid of your weeds, you first need to check how they grow and spread. Uncultivated bare soil will also attract unwanted plants to grow as weeds. So that's why it's quite useful to have those areas covered with plants growing, or somehow avoiding the weeds becoming established. Pupils should understand which plants are vegetables and which are weeds, and a weeding routine established to remove these from the growing areas. One idea to make this easier is to create a separate weed bed where weeds are actually tended to and labelled, so children can compare and review a plant before removing it. These beds also act as go-to areas for bees and insects. We often talk about wildflower meadows and things being established to allow for biodiversity. Weeds should, however, be removed before they go to seed in all areas of the garden, so that the volume can be controlled from year to year. If you stop them seeding, then it means that you're not going to be inundated with weeds the following year. Some weeds, it should be remembered, are edible, and pupils can research this too. Ground elder, for example, is an invasive rhizomatous weed, but it is believed to have been in the UK since Roman times and brought here as a herb. Dandelions are also edible, with young leaves often added to salads or used in stir fries, and many people throw them into smoothies for a nutritious boost. Dandelion flower petals are also edible and can be used in a variety of dishes. And they can also be used to make a delicious dandelion syrup. I remember collecting loads of dandelion flower heads during COVID time and making a dandelion syrup. But as always, make sure you know what plant you're picking before eating it. So this child said there's a small area inside the garden and there's tons of weeds in it. And we were trying to get all the weeds, but then they spread and they're all about the garden now. So they had a bit of work to do in getting their thing. To the garden involves active and ongoing processes of observing plants as they grow and maintaining the garden in the appropriate conditions. So regular routines and recording can improve people's health and well-being through outdoor activity and connecting to nature. Developing their numeracy, maths and artistic skills, as well as demonstrating skills of scientific inquiry and investigation using practical techniques. So tending will hopefully lead to a successful harvest, and harvesting is the topic for the next webinar, but there's a couple of little observations from teachers here. The project links in with eating and nutrition. The designing was maths and science, learning about germination, and linked in with our science curriculum. So the benefits to the curriculum are well known, but the children also have different points of view about what were the good things about the gardens, and I'll just let you read those yourself. In particular, we find that a number of pupils talked about getting their mental health better. So having this responsibility, tending to the garden, helps them to develop a kind of affiliation with the garden and helps their mental well-being. And one final comment was, if we have a garden, it just makes a huge more possibilities. And that is the end of this little presentation on tending to the garden. I don't know if has Lindsay turned up, I wonder.
Thank you, Professor Gray. I'm not seeing Lindsay in the participants list. So perhaps where would you like to go next?
Well, I might just come in with a couple of observations on top of Donald's sort of like presentation. So thank you, Donald. I'm Bob Donald from One Seed Forward, for those of you who haven't met me already. Yeah, I mean, Donald's absolutely right about the whole sort of like tending processes. I think it's important about routines, and it's not just about routines during school hours, but it's also about looking at what you can do during school holidays. The involvement of the community, if that's at all possible, is really quite important. If you're able to get community involvement, whether that be parents of the pupils, or whether it's actually sort of like outside groups, it really sort of like helps to sort of make a decision about how the tending process goes. I think that one of the issues that we'd certainly seen in Aberdeen was that just because of some of the ways of the layouts of the schools, it wasn't actually possible to go in and so like do some tending over the school holidays. So I think that means that what you need to think about when you're looking at your planning of what you're going to be planting is what can grow within the time period that you've got available. And well, we know the weeds will grow, but anything that you'd actually want to be looking at harvesting points, etc. So I think it's important to try and see as part of your processes and to try and get as much involvement as you can with parental groups and also with community. One other thing, just as a kind of maybe sort of a bit of advice, if you are sowing seeds with pupils and you're looking at the weed bed and trying to work out what are weeds and what aren't, what I quite often do is I actually sow quite a few seeds as a clump at the end of a row, because then they should be growing at the same time. So if you're looking at a row, hopefully you'll be able to distinguish the two leaves of the plant that you're trying to grow, rather than the seeds and anything else. But that was the only observations I had from the tending point of view. I'm not sure if perhaps Natalia, if you want to see if anyone's got any specific questions at the moment before we then sort of like a wee chat about some other things.
Yes, I had a question. I was thinking dandelion head syrup, so I just quickly Googled it just to see if my questions was completely crazy, and everybody knew an answer, and I was the only one who didn't. So what did you use it for? I mean, did you eat it? What did you use it for?
I can't remember now. I think I poured it on my porridge in the morning or so, whatever, you know.
Like a honey, like a condiment.
It's a pourable thing.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, it's quite often referred to as dandelion honey. You do need to pick quite a lot of flower heads. Okay.
Yeah.
Just a bit of a warning there. And then what you do is you put them into boiling water and you let it sort of soak for about 12 hours. Then you strain it off, and then you put in, which is great, equal amounts of sugar to the amount of water that you've got that's been produced through the dandelion. It keeps really well, so it is really good. You just got to make sure, as Donald said as well, about making sure that people don't have any allergies, any pollen allergies or anything like that. So you just have to ensure that you're careful about knowing what you can eat. But it tastes really, really good.
It tastes good.
But bees are better.
Yes, better
Absolutely.
at making honey than humans.
Yes, I'm more adept to it.
Yeah.
Well, if you let the bees to the dandelions first, and then you can take second go, you know.
Well, exactly.
It's very interesting. Yeah. Thank you. Any questions from the rest of you guys? Let me open the chat to see. I'm not seeing any particular questions. Wondered if, whilst maybe people are thinking about their questions, you let us know a little bit more about what you have been up to. So both of you love your growing food, love your gardens, love your nature. So anytime, I just love picking both your brains on all things nature. So what have you been up to recently? Anything exciting?
Well, I would tell you, but I think Lindsay's just actually managed to come into the chat. So I'm not sure if Lindsay, if you're able to sort of basically come online with us. Hi there.
Hello. Yes, I totally apologize. Been one of those days, I'm afraid. So yes, I'm here.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, for managing to make it. I was just away to pick Bob's brain and Donald's brain on all things nature, because there's always loads of interesting stuff, and they were just about to answer my question when you came in.
And sorry.
But you're a better option still, because we promised you to the people, so to the participants. So it's really great to have you here. So if you need a moment that's quite all right. If you're happy to just share your screen and start your bit, that's also okay. So what would you prefer?
Yes, I mean, I'm happy to share. I don't know if you said I'm a bit of a caveat that it's actually my colleague Rona Moyer that was meant to do the presentation, and unfortunately she's not able to. So I'm kind of a bit winging it. Is that okay? I have put together some slides and things, but really just to talk through what we did and maybe a little bit about what I've kind of learned and going forward. So
That's great. If you could just tell us a bit more about yourself, you know, and sort of introduce yourself. Sure. Thank you.
Problem. So I'm Lindsay McBride. I was head teacher at Owen School for about 4.5 years. I have now moved to Craigievar School, which the good thing is, and I'll go through once I share my screen about kind of my journey with the outdoor learning and garden schools. But both schools have got fantastic outdoor spaces, and that's really sort of why I am where I am, just with garden schools and having worked with Bob and all the lovely people for the outdoor learning and owls. So let me just get this sorted and we'll hopefully see if that works. Just get this up. Is that working?
Yes, we can see that. Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. So, again, I'm apologising for the sort of ad hoc basis of this, so I'll just whiz through. So, when I arrived at Owen School, I'd kind of done quite a lot of work on outdoor learning, but that was in Glasgow, so a very, very different context. And when I saw what the resources were in terms of outdoor learning and gardening, I thought, yeah, okay, we need to really think about what's right for the school. And however, unfortunately, although I was quite enthusiastic about outdoor learning, my gardening expertise was not the best, shall we say, hence the reason for the little image on that slide. So it was very much a case of learning along with the kids as far as I was concerned. So what I'm going to talk through just as I get through the pictures is just really how I kind of started small, even though the outdoors space at Owen was quite overwhelming, I think, to start with. How we embedded outdoor learning and some of the reasons and the catalysts for that. And then I'd like to talk quickly about the Food for Thought grant that really was sort of the last year that I was at Owen that really sort of took us to that next stage. And then again, starting at Craigievar just at the start of this session, kind of what I've learned and what I'm hoping to do going forward there. So, what I kind of stood for and what I was really passionate about was outdoor learning, as I've said. However, I was mostly infant-based and my practice, and when I was doing that, I was doing a lot of learning through play and forwarding that within the school. So another one of my sort of passions. Also digital skills, and of course skills for life, learning and work. So with the sort of research that's been coming out, I think you'll all be aware of the fact that, you know, we realised that in 2022 that 74% of children were spending less time outdoors than prison inmates, which was a statistic that sort of scared me quite a lot. There's, for obvious reason, research is indicating that frequent outdoor play sort of might mitigate that connection between higher screen time, which is up by about 50% in recent years, and then later suboptimal neurodevelopment, a clear link there. And then taking responsibility for helping a plant to grow, being trusted to care for it and helping it to thrive, brings feelings of pride, empowerment. Being in nature has a calming effect, and gardening has been shown to reduce stress levels, improve mood and enhance self-esteem. So with that sort of drive for promoting digital skills, but still wanting that balance of getting the kids outdoors, and I'm also very passionate about developing habits of mindfulness and self-regulation, which I think is really important at the moment. it's made sense to sort of say, right, okay, I need to upskill myself, and this is the best way to do it, by getting the kids out there. So, as I said, I joined Owen School in 2019. This was the part of the outdoor space, so really lovely, really lucky to have it. But that was from quite a few years before that picture, before I joined, and sort of this was more what I was faced with, which again was fantastic and great. But as you can see from the back, very overgrown, and I think that is one of the challenges as well, is just keeping and maintaining these spaces. To the left of the picture there, you see one of our willow structures, but desperately needed taming, and again quite an overwhelming task to think, right, where do we start? So I love this wee quote. I think everything you've got to start small and then think about, where do I want to go? And I'll be perfectly honest, I didn't really know at that point what we were going to do and how the outdoor learning was going to go, how the gardening was going to go. So I kind of took a lot of lessons from people around about me, a lot of people that had more experience in gardening. As I say, I can quite easily kill a cactus. So really sort of helping the kids to see that I didn't really know what I was doing as well. So again, I'm just going to whiz through some photographs. When we started, I thought it was really important to match what we were doing outside with inside, to link the two. So, when in our projects and things, we were looking at the earthworms, we were looking at wormeries and soil, we were looking at growing things, seedlings on the windowsills, and using more of that space, which then moved on to our pots and our planters, and you can see again at the top left, that's kind of, they had daffodils in them, but nothing that was really the kids could use or be really sensory as well. I like the herbs because there was the smell, the taste, the feel, and so that was kind of the first small steps, and that was really all we did. And then COVID-19 sort of hit, and everything just went a little bit crazy. However, it was definitely a sort of kick up the bottom, excuse my language, to get us outside, not just gardening, not just, learning for sustainability, but just getting outside. So we had lunches outside. We were at that point, and I will say we were really, really lucky to have a member of staff who was forest school trained. So we learned an awful lot about the types of activities we could do to link those outdoor learning experiences to the indoor experiences. And I think that's one of the main challenges with people that are not confident in taking the kids outside, is knowing what to do with them and possibly going outside just for the sake of going outside. So we learned an awful lot from Shirley, who's works for Leafy Trails and does lots of fantastic things. So we were using our outdoor space. You can see not any gardening in these photos actually, but we were using our willow. We'd learned how to do that. The children were getting more and more used to being in the outdoor space, getting more used to the routines, getting used to treating the outdoor space as another classroom. And actually, I think that's really, really important when you are trying to set up your school garden or do something outdoors, because the first few times, I know people will probably appreciate, it's pretty much a riot, if it's new to the kids. So we were in that really lucky position of the children really getting used to it wasn't abnormal to go outside. It wasn't abnormal to grab your wellies. It wasn't abnormal to sit and listen to staff outside and have discussions outside. And it was also not overwhelming to be in that huge space that we had. But as the same as you would do inside the classroom, boundaries were set, where the children could go, timings, and obviously all the safety instructions and things we had to teach the children as we went along. So I'd say the next sort of catalyst, if we're talking about school gardens, was really Rona's introduction to One Seed Forward in garden schools, and Bob in particular was fantastic. So we started working a little bit on some of the projects that were available and that were out there. The shoebox garden, we attempted the grow your own loaf. I will say I think we managed to have about 3 sort of ears of corn, wheat that we actually managed to grow, but we attempted it, and then we had all potatoes and the usual things. But Bob really did give us that help and that pointer, and I really would say the garden schools, with that really sort of good framework, set us on our way and gave the teachers confidence about where we could go and what we should be doing. Again, because I needed that, and I'm sure I'm not alone. So those big areas that you saw on that sort of second photo at the back, this is where I thought, okay, we've got some really good areas at the moment that are beautiful and colourful, but essentially not being used to their maximum potential. And it was quite a thought to clear those. Thought, you know, this is going to take an awful lot of work, but my goodness, did the kids enjoy ripping out all those weeds and really getting their hands dirty. Because of course they were used to doing that as well. They were used to handling the tools. They were just some more than others, but you could see the teamwork, you could see the skills for life developing, and the resilience, and actually just the interest in what they were finding in the soil, what they were ripping out, what was a weed, what wasn't, what did they do when they came across something really tricky that they couldn't remove. And the kids, again, really taking ownership of it because it was them that did it. And what a difference you could tell from when they started to when they finished. So sort of building on that starting small, the next step, I suppose, was where I said, right, we want the kids to be able to have choice. We want them to be able to see what they're doing, to make the same mistakes that I make. So the next thing we did was sort of say, right, we'll get some tires, we'll paint them, and we gave them the choice whether they worked by themselves or with a partner. They decided what they wanted to grow. They did a little bit of research on it. We went and bought the seeds for the things that they wanted to grow, and of course that's what we did. Along with that, we also had a sort of bigger planter that we had. We thought, okay, we'll use that as well. And this was actually the grow your own loaf planter. So before this had been the grow your own loaf planter we had, but we then used that for potatoes, and we decided to see whether the straw method was better than the soil method, and do a little bit of science in there. And at the left hand side you can see even the really young children getting involved. So this is sort of the next stage of the older class. Was we gave the responsibility to doing the tires and really sort of having that choice. So I'm glad to say that they were really successful. As you can see, some chose to do flowers, some chose to do tomatoes, which weren't quite so successful at that point, strawberries, lots of other things. And the kids really did take care of them. They took responsibility for them. They checked on their tire, and were always keen to show everybody what they'd been doing. So it was after that that we had met the criteria for our Stage 2 Seedling Award. It was fantastic. And then we, the following year, we decided to apply for the Food for Thought grant. And that really did mean that we took a step up in terms of what we could do, but also in the planning. I think up to that point, it had kind of been, right, okay, we've got this framework, we'll work through it and see where we get to. But by then our sort of vision for it had developed, and we thought, okay, well, what really is possible here? And with a little bit of funding, we decided that really we needed to be able to have a sustainable growing area that was decent areas that we had to plant, that could be well maintained, and it was, you know, more like an allotment type sort of setup. So with the Food for Thought grant, we actually named our project Grow for Good, because we wanted it not just to be a one-off and then, you know, that was it, it was over. And I'll speak just at the end about the challenge, because that really is one of the challenges, I think, to maintain and sustain your growing with the schools. So we were lucky to have our raised beds built, and we had then lots of work to do in terms of, again, bringing that inside and outside together. So the children were working out how much compost they would need. They were working out, you know, how big we would need the area of the cardboard, as you can see, so that we had our liners in, and lots of different things, but really a huge project that did have that IDL component where it was the kids were in charge, they were leading it and deciding what we were doing, both when we were doing our usual maths and when we were outside with our outdoor learning. Part of our Grow for Good project was that we really wanted to get a lot of community partners involved. We were really lucky with our parent council and our parents. We had a greenhouse that needed a little bit of TLC. It was donated from a parent, I think, the year before, but we hadn't really used it. And I think that's still something that we are going to well, I say we, I'm not at the school anymore, but I think we could have used that to greater effect. But the kids were involved in sort of renovating it, making sure it was fit for purpose. We had the children write to companies, so we had donations of compost that the parents helped to pick up and put in. And then, of course, we had the deciding what we were going to plant and all the research and investigating about what we could plant, what would be good, what could we use in terms of the school kitchens, and what we could use in terms of the community, because we wanted to share what we grew in our produce with the community. So the rest is really just a little bit of showing kind of what we achieved. We used our willow again. It's a fantastic resource. So trying to tie together that. We had lots and lots of lettuce, which we bagged up. We had it in the school canteen. We also involved the Gary Kitchen, who came in and did some lessons on food preparation, on how we could use some of the produce. And then what I'd hoped to do if I'd stayed at the school was the older pupils then share that information and teach the younger ones, so that we kept that knowledge and those skills within the school. Now, I apologise because this is the only photo I seem to have of our Joroform composter. I got very excited about compost. I think it's an age thing, but this rotary thermal composter was great, and I wish I was there to see what had happened with it. But just the learning involved in ratios and everything that we needed to know. So again, a work in progress when I left, and certainly something that I'd like to learn more about. So just kind of rounding off towards the end of last session when I left, we had a fantastic array of produce. We advertised that on our Twitter site. We put it out to the parents for parents just to come and take what they needed, take what they wanted. We also put it to, I think, the Inch community site, and just kind of tried to open up the wider community to come in and use it, and with some lovely messages and pictures of it being used, which was great. And I think that one of the difficult things is, of course, and I'm sure you've spoken about it previously, is that, you know, the harvest of everything happens over the summer, and that was certainly a challenge. We had enough local kind of parents to help us with maintaining that. At my new school at Craigievar, we don't have that, and that's going to be something that I'll really have to think about, is how to take that and make sure that we're sustaining it over the summer at that really important, crucial point. So I know from when I left, there's still growing going on. There's still potatoes, as you can see, they're given away. So the challenge, like I say, I think, is getting everybody out. We were lucky that with the outdoor learning, we had sort of lots of resources and things that we did. And we had the skills that were kind of gradually built up within our children. What I would like to do at my new school is make sure that the children are involved right from the very start. Definitely do the sort of starting small, and we had to, and what we'll do is plan together. But I feel far more confident doing it this time. And I think particularly knowing the Garden Schools programme has been really useful.